Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Thursday, November 27th, 2025. And yes, I'm back home, back to the Macedon Ranges. My little mate Neil, you saw there, very happy. We got back yesterday actually, and did take him for a quick walk. He couldn't get out the door quick enough when I got back. My son actually said, who looked after him while we were away, that he barely wanted to go for a walk while we were gone, and I was in the door for about 5 minutes, and he was at the door ready to go. So, and this morning at about 7 o'clock, he's like, "Dad, come on, you've had about 10 days off, let's go." And he's out the door. But I must admit, I think he's lacking a little bit of maybe fight condition at the moment, or competition. What do you call it? Condition. Because he's struggling already. We're only about halfway through the walk. So anyway, but it's good to be home. As I said, we got back yesterday, long flight from Dallas, and really good flight actually, 17 hours it was for the trip home. So it's pretty long, pretty grueling, but we got back, as I said, yesterday morning, and had a good night's sleep last night, let's say. But anyway, until this little bugger was at the bed saying, "Get up, Dad, let's go." So a little bit going on while we've been away in the boxing world. Well, just a quick recap of actually what we did on our trip. We flew from Melbourne to Dallas. We stayed overnight in Dallas, and I didn't put anything up you would have seen except for a couple of editions of Walking Boxing I did over there. But we flew from Melbourne to Dallas, stayed overnight, then flew to New York. We were there for I think 4 nights, I think it was. Went to the UFC, which was great. It was a long night though. They said it started at 6 o'clock, which is normally around the time, if you go to a fight night, a boxing fight night, 6 o'clock is when the main card starts, and then they sort of have the main event on at around 9 o'clock, or maybe even sometimes a little bit earlier. So I thought, yep, that's good. Well, we got there. It was the start of the early prelims. So it wasn't even the prelim card. It was the early prelims. And then they had the prelims, and then they had the main card. So there was 3 sort of different types of card, 14 fights in total. It was a marathon. And of course, Jesse, I keep forgetting, it's Madalena, I know that. Jesse, whatever it is, Madalena. Again, it's not really my cup of tea, the UFC sort of stuff. Look, I really admire them, I really do, but geez, some of the fights are pretty tedious to get through. But then again, I suppose it's no different to a boxing night. You get a few fights that might not hit the mark and might be a little bit dull, but geez, when some of them hit the floor and they just lie there for like what seems like an eternity. I know it's all part of the strategy and what they do, and it's all tactics and all the rest of it, I get it. But just as a boxing guy, it's really tough to get my head around. It really is. But look, the UFC crowd, they love it. It is a different type of crowd. I think I said that in one of the videos, a real different type of crowd to the boxing crowd. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a type of market there is out there, demographic that works really, really well for the UFC. It reminds me of sort of the, what you'd get to like the motocross, supercross, or whatever it is. Lots of sleeve tattoos and all the rest of it. I'm not trying to stereotype anyone here anyway, although I suppose I am, but a lot of testosterone in the building. There's a different type of feel in the arena in a UFC event than a boxing event. A lot younger crowd as well. The demographic is a lot different. At the boxing crowd, you get a lot of sort of, what would you call it, sort of 30 to 35 years onwards sort of seems to be the main sort of crowd, whereas with the UFC, it's all 16, 17, 18 up to about sort of 40, 45. That sort of seems to be the market. But anyway, it works. Massive crowd there. Great atmosphere, I will say. They do it really, really well. A fight in the crowd. Oh, geez, I don't know. I thought it was relegated to the boxing segment, but or the boxing fraternity. But it's obviously the same as the UFC. Just the egos and whatever delusion some of these fighters live under. They've got to flex their muscles, and I suppose one set of people you don't sort of mess with are the Chechens, because they don't muck around. They're brutal, and I think that guy, whatever his name is, that sort of caused it, was in the middle of it. Probably regretted it afterwards, because all those Chechens were sort of all over him, and Again, the golden rule is, whether it's inside the ring or outside the ring or the octagon, whatever it is, if they've got one of those beards, then you don't mess with them, all right? And the last name that ends with a V, yeah, stay away from them, I think. So anyway, but no, it was a good night. We then just did the usual stuff in New York, then went to, got the train up to Providence, Rhode Island, which was good. Just thought we'd break it up a little bit. It was like a 4.5 hour train trip from New York to Boston. So we thought we'd sort of get pretty much just over halfway and break it up and go somewhere we hadn't been. So we went to Providence, just an overnight stay. Then we got the train the next day to Boston. We went to a couple of Boston Celtics games. Also went to the Celtics in Brooklyn, actually in New York. They won in Brooklyn. Then they lost to Brooklyn in Boston, which didn't go down too well with the locals. And then they beat the Orlando Magic a couple of days later. And then, we came home. So it was about 10 days in total, something like that anyway. It was a good little sort of getaway. I always like to do it once a year with the family. My son is a hardcore Boston Celtics fan, so he loves getting over there and seeing this Boston Celtics play, even though they're nowhere near as good as they were a year or two ago. They've lost a few players with injury and trades and everything else, but still had a couple of wins anyway. All right, well, on to the boxing. And on this day, there's probably just one thing actually, there's a couple of things. One thing's been fight-related is in 2004, I think it was, Marco Antonio Barrera beat Eric Morales for the second time to win the trilogy 2-1. That was at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. You remember the first fight, Morales actually won the first fight. I think that was at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas in 2000. And in 2002, Marco Antonio Barrera returned the favour, beat Morales and gave him his first defeat, actually. And that was at the MGM. And then in 2004, on this day, and Barrera, as I said, won the trilogy 2-1 with a decision win over Morales in what was an unbelievable trilogy, wasn't it? And we always talk about Ward and Gaddy, but geez, what a trilogy this was. And Morales would also go on to have a trilogy with Manny Pacquiao as well. So he was into wars, wasn't he? But that's what happened on this day. But also on this day, if you're a fan of the Rocky movies, and I'm sure you are if you're a boxing fan, on this day, Rocky IV was actually released. I think it was in 1986 or 1985. I haven't got the exact date. It was either 85 or 86, but it was definitely on this day that Rocky IV was released in theatres. In my opinion, in a lot of people's opinions, it's the best one. Nowhere near it for me. I always had Rocky IV in fourth position, which I know a lot of people probably won't like. I always had Rocky III as the best one. I know most people have number one as the best. I just love Rocky III. I think it was great. And then surprisingly, I actually have Rocky II at number 2. I think it's a really underrated movie in the franchise. I thought, unlike many sequels, it really lived up. And I thought that last fight with Apollo Creed, where he won by 15th round knockout, was just one of the best moments in cinema history when they both hit the deck. I know it's unrealistic the way it happened, that they both fell down and whoever won or whoever got up first won the bout. Because of course in real life, when they hit the deck, the referee would have said, both of you get up, wipe your gloves and let's finish this thing. So they wouldn't have had the opportunity to get up, considering there was no, Rocky landed a punch, didn't he? But Apollo didn't. He was the one that went down, and so it's a little bit unrealistic, but who cares? It's Hollywood. In real life, if Rocky had actually knocked him down, I suppose the referee would have helped Rocky back up, because he's the one that landed the punch, and then waited for Apollo Creed to see whether he could have beaten the 10 count. That's what would have happened in real life boxing. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Rocky Balboa won the belt, but I had Rocky 1 as the third best, and then I had Rocky 4 in the number 4 slot. Because I just thought it just went a little bit too Hollywood. It almost went to like he was a superhero. Like, the first two were very realistic. Rocky 3 was more, like a cartoonish superhero type of thing, where he beats the big bad Clubber Lang, and then Rocky 4 with the big Russian. It sort of got a little bit ridiculous after that. I'm glad, maybe it would have been better. I was just going to say, I'm glad in Rocky 5 they didn't go even better and have some mutant, a mental patient or something that comes out of there to fight Rocky. There's another challenge, who knows? But the Rocky 5 they come along with wasn't probably much better than that would have been anyway. But anyway, that's what happened on this day. Rocky 4 was released in theatres. What did you think of the director's cut? I hated it. I thought it was pretty ordinary. I thought all they did really was cut out a lot of the good original clips and replace them with average alternate clips. They weren't really better takes, they were just takes that were just left on the cutting room floor, and they've just taken out sections of good clips and replaced it with that, just as an alternative version, and I thought an inferior alternate version anyway. So that's what I thought of Rocky for. All right, well, just a few things going on in the boxing world at the moment. I suppose the big thing that everyone's talking about, well, a couple of things, well, probably three big things at the moment. We'll start with TSZYU. He's fighting, in another, 2.5 weeks, I think it is. What's today, the 27th, so it'll be another 20 days, so another 3 weeks away. And he'll step in with Anthony Velasquez. Again, I'll say that I'm really impressed with his training's been really good. I'm happy with the opponent. Look, he's undefeated, had a few knockouts, a lot of knockouts. Look, very, unknown, I suppose, is probably the first thing. But look, he'll be solid. He's probably, having a little bit more look at him, I actually think he's probably a little bit better than the opponent I thought they would have gotten for Tim. I really thought they would have, like the Joey Spencer was just a layup for TSZYU. He looked good on paper, he talked it up, really well, but really we saw in the ring was really way out of his depth, nowhere near world level. Velasquez, I'm not saying he's that much better, but what I'm saying is he is better. And it surprised me that they've gone for Velasquez, who, again, I don't think he's at the level of Tim, but better than what I thought they would actually get for him, if that makes sense. So I'm expecting TSZYU to win comfortably, but I don't think it'll be an easy fight in that it'll be like Joey Spencer, where he'll just go through 3 rounds of sort of just finding his range and then opening up in the 4th round and getting him out of there. I think Velasquez will give a lot more than that. Tough young kid, looks like too. Good boxing ability, okay power. But again, a lot of fighters look the goods until they actually step in there with an elite fighter. Now, I suppose the big question is how elite is TSZYU these days? And I suppose we're going to find out, aren't we? Look, I expect him to look good. I think it'll be a first-up performance under Pedro Diaz. I think he'll look good. He looks really good in training, working on a lot of different things. You would have seen some clips. One thing that really impresses me, or really sort of got my attention, is the fact he's really looking at different angles now. Tim was always an in and out type of fighter, which actually left him really vulnerable by being counted being counted on the counter. And going back in a straight line, not really giving his opponent any angles whatsoever, no head movement. You can sort of see now that he's punching and he's trying to find a new angle and come in from a different side. And I think that's really good, really will help with his defense and also attack, obviously, but just giving a different dimension to him by attacking and then finding a different angle. And you would have seen just recently, Bam Rodriguez does it really, really well. Lomachenko used to do it really well. I'm not saying that Tim will be anywhere near that, but I like the idea of him. It's just giving his opponent something else to think about. We all know his offense has always been really good, but he's really fallen down in the defensive department. And I think working on these little things, and I think we've talked about it before, it's the little things, it's the tweaks, which is, to me, is what Pedro Diaz looks like he's doing. He's not really doing anything as far as his punching patterns goes or anything like that. He knows TSZYU can handle himself that way, but it's the little things like, don't just stand there after you've punched and wait for the retaliation, or don't go back in a straight line and wait for the retaliation or put yourself in harm's way. He's really getting him to get lower, and just give a different angle. And again, it's really helping him in the defensive actions that he has. So those little things are going to be the things that I think we'll really notice in Tim. Again, I think he'll have a good solid win over Velasquez, but a good solid opponent for him to get started with anyway. And then I suppose the big question comes is, what happens in 2026? What are the expectations of Tim by fans, the media, by himself and his team? This will be the big questions that we have. I've got a feeling that Pedro Diaz will not be swayed or anything like that about as far as where he sees Tim at. He won't be sort of drawn into a false sense of where Tim's at. I think it is. He'll see Velasquez for what he is. He'll see Tim do the job. But I don't think he'll get sucked in to think, oh, geez, how good's this guy? Is back, and let's just go for the next big fight that we can get. I think he's been around long enough, experienced enough, that I think no matter how good Tim looks, I think he'll say, no, we need another at least 1, maybe 2 fights of this sort of caliber, and then we'll look to step up from there. Again, I really welcome the fact that they've gotten in there so quickly. The fact that Pedro Diaz has probably thought, well, I don't really have to reinvent the wheel here. We just have to improve things sort of 10%, and I reckon he's going to be back to where he, close to where he was. So if that's the case, I just think it's a case of learning on the job, getting the right type of opponents who can not sort of give you too many issues, but also allow you to work on a few of those things that you've been doing in camp without too much risk of getting nailed or outboxed or anything like that. So I think it's a really good move to actually learn on the job and put a few of those things into practice. And I think he'll, again, get the job done on December 17th, and what should be a really good night. It's come around really quick. They didn't muck around, did they? What did they give us? About 4 weeks or 5 weeks maybe notice. So yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing how Tim goes. The other one, of course, is OPETAIA. He's fighting not this weekend, the one after. But there's been a fair bit said about the Ramirez situation where Ramirez is now fighting Benavides. Look, I did see, and I'm sure he's playing a few games here, but Ramirez in a recent interview actually said that, I don't know what he's getting sort of up in a twist about, because he said up until recently I didn't really know even who OPETAIA was. So I know that's a little bit like sticking the knife in and twisting it and even breaking it off a little bit for OPETAIA. The fact that this guy is not really even acknowledging that he's a legitimate fighter in the division when he's sort of universally known as the best fighter in the division. Now, the only thing I will say about it is that even though I think Ramirez is playing games, I get where he's coming from. Now, the reason I say this is, look, here in Australia, I know Jai's not overly known as a superstar here, by the way, outside of the real hardcore boxing fans, I get that. But overall, the boxing fans here see Jai as what I think he is undeniably the best cruiserweight in the division. He's a killer. I think he's got unbelievable potential. I think he can do some massive things. But what we've got to look at, it's a little bit like the TSZYU a situation as well, is that overseas they don't view our fighters the way we do. And even though overseas, talking to boxing fans, they all know Jai, they like Jai, he's not that superstar that, well, us boxing fans here in Australia sort of know and think of him as. So looking through Ramirez's eyes, he would absolutely see it as a no-brainer to be fighting David Benavides instead of OPETAIA, because Jai represents massive risk for Ramirez. I know he's got the IBF belt, and that's probably something he might want, maybe, who knows, but maybe he's not really stressed about the unification thing. But he would see OPETAIA as maximum risk for really little reward apart from the belt. And as I said, he might not even think of the belt as a priority. You might think, oh, well, I've got enough belts throughout my career, I'm not that stressed about unification. We all think it's about unification for these guys. OPETAIA's mind is on unification. He doesn't care who's got the belts, he just wants them, he'll fight whoever. But how do we know Ramirez doesn't really care about unification? At his stage of his career, he might just be looking at the biggest fights for the biggest money. And undeniably, David Benavides is that guy. He probably represents twice as much money as he could probably get by fighting Jai. So you got to look at it from his point of view as well. We're all looking through Australian eyes saying, well, this is the biggest injustice ever. He's ducking Jai and this is bullshit and he should be fighting Jai. But again, we've got to remember it's a business. And these guys at Ramirez's stage of his career are looking at the biggest fights for the biggest money. And unfortunately, OPETAIA just doesn't represent that guy. If you're looking at purely about belts, then yes, Jai makes sense, Badu Jack makes sense, but really in the scheme of things, it's not that big a fight to people outside of Australia. So I get it why Oscar De La Hoya and Ramirez have really played the OPETAIA fight down and tried. We see it as ducking. I just see them looking at it going, well, it's not our priority. We'll just put it to the side. And Eddie Hearn and Mick Francis and Jai can probably jump up and down as much as they want. But the facts are is that the Benavides fight is a way bigger fight for Ramirez than Jai, and that's just the way we've got to look at it. And that's why he's taken this fight. And that's also probably why Benavides has said, well, yeah, after I fight Ramirez, I'll probably go back down to 175. Now, again, we're all horrified over here in Australia thinking, oh, there we go, Benavides is going to duck Jai as well and all this. He's not ducking OPETAIA, I can tell you. David Benavides wouldn't be ducking Jai. He'd be looking at it the same thing. Well, geez, I've got this this Aussie who can obviously fight, who's a great risk, great talent, who could really give me some problems, especially at 200 pounds. He's probably looking at that as like, again, maximum risk, but little reward apart from another belt. And David Benavidez has got a lot of belts. So again, he might not look at Jai's belt as being a priority. So he'd be looking at saying all that risk involved with Jai, why would I want that? Why would I want, as the Americans say, why would I want that smoke? Why would I want the risk at this stage of my career when I can go back down to 175 and have potential fights apart from Ramirez with Benavidez, Bivol and Better Bev and these types of guys. And maybe even Canelo, you just don't know. So I again, looking through Benavidez's eyes as well, could see why he would say, well, I'm going to go to Ramirez. That's the next biggest fight for me because Better Bev and Bivol are off the table at the moment. I'm going to go up to the next biggest fight for me, which is Ramirez, and then I'm going to go back down and see if I can chase the other 175-pound champions in Better Bev and Bivol, and then maybe worry about Jai. So look, I don't want to rain on anyone's parade with the whole thing, but I've got to say, as much as I love Jai and think he's the best cruiserweight in the world and really on the cusp of being a top 10 pound-for-pound fighter, I 100% see David Benavidez and Gilberto Ramirez's opinions on not really factoring in Jai into their plans at the moment. That's just boxing. It really is. It doesn't always work out the way we think it should, and the fighters who should get their opportunities get them. That's just not the way boxing works, especially when you've got experienced fighters and managers and promoters with the opposition who see someone like a Jai OPETAIA like they are as maximum risk with little reward apart from that IBF belt. And again, in this world of belts just pretty much growing on trees, and sometimes the fighters struggling to hold up the amount of belts that they have when they get in the ring, belts aren't the absolute priority in all things. We see them as that being that way, but unfortunately they don't see it. So that's where I see that anyway. I really hope that maybe Benavidez, if he does beat Ramirez, reconsiders, or if Ramirez beats Benavidez, he reconsiders. But I think it's pretty obvious at the moment that Ramirez is not interested in fighting Jai. That's just life, and I doubt that he'll fight Jai. I think if he does manage to beat David Benavidez, I think he might even look to go up to heavyweight himself and test himself up there rather than fighting Jai. So I can see where Jai's coming from. He's looking at 2026 as being the year of unification. He sees it as, look, we're all in a hurry to see him get up to heavyweight. And by the sounds of things, he's not. He's just looking to unify the cruiserweight title and then go up to heavyweight if it makes sense. We're all in a rush for him to go up, but I don't see him in a rush at the moment at all. So, g'day, how you doing? So anyway, we'll see that. Gone around in circles a little bit on that, I suppose, but that's where I see the Jai, Benavidez and Ramirez situation at the moment. And one last thing, I suppose, is the Jake Paul Anthony Joshua fight. Well, again, I'll say it, I've got to give Jake Paul his props. It's an 8x3 minute round fight. Well, they got 10-ounce gloves, 12-ounce gloves, they might be, I think. Might be 10s, actually. And you see the size difference of both the guys when they faced off. I reckon I saw Jake Paul gulp at one stage when he went it wasn't really face-to-face, it was face-to-chest, wasn't it, with Anthony Joshua, and the way Anthony Joshua was looking down at him. Now, look, one thing I'll say is I'll give full credit. If this fight is fair income and it's 100% real, and there's no rules attached or conditions or like that, I give Jake Paul the respect he probably deserves and and as earned if he does get in the ring and go full tilt with Anthony Joshua. The issue I have is that I think we all know by rights that this should be the easiest fight of Anthony Joshua's career. He should get Jake Paul out of there in 1 or 2 rounds. That's the way it really should play down or go down. Now, I know Jake Paul has made some improvements, and I know he's improved a lot out of sight in his boxing and everything else, but at the end of the day, by rights, he should not be even semi-competitive against Anthony Joshua. My concern is that if he is actually competitive, come here, buddy. Almost right out on the bloody road there. My question is that if he does make the fight competitive and does win rounds and give Joshua something to think about, something's amiss for me. Because I don't care how much Jake Paul has improved, he's nowhere near improved enough to even, as I said, be competitive against Joshua. So how do we rate the fight if Jake Paul gives Anthony Joshua a really good fight and goes 8 tough rounds with him? I don't know. Does it really affect the, I suppose, the stature of boxing? I don't know. We'll see. I'm fascinated by the fight, though. It's going to come around really quick. Was it December 19th? So we're going to go from Tim into Paul and Joshua. Yeah, that's my concern. If the fight is really competitive, where does this leave boxing? I don't know. Give me your thoughts on it anyway. I don't really know what I'm trying to say, to be honest. But again, by all rights, Jake Paul should be knocked out cleanly and easily by Joshua. And if he's not, yes, what is going on in our great sport? I don't know. But I understand. Look, I have got my head around, by the way, and it's taken me a long time. Like I'm assuming a lot of you guys and girls out there that have followed boxing for a long time. It has taken me a long time to come around to the new age of boxing. And now I sort of accept it for what it is. It is no longer just boxing as a sport, as a business, I suppose, that we've all always known and loved. This is now an entertainment industry or a business, and I think we have to accept that these fights are going to become more and more common. Fighters are going to be looking at these as a more suitable money grabs than a traditional fight. I don't like it, but again, as I said, I've come to accept that this is probably where we're at now, is that there will be world boxing entertainment. And again, maybe it's another organisation again. Maybe it's the WBE, the World Boxing Entertainment, and it's purely made up of these type of fights. I know we're sort of getting there at the moment with a lot of these fights taking place with Most Valuable Promotions and a couple of others throwing their hats in the Misfits and all that sort of stuff, but maybe there is going to be something along that line. I mean, BoxRec have already started a page now, or a category. Come here, buddy. Oh, through the puddle. I've already started a category on their page about these type of fights being separate to normal fights. So you'll have a record for normal fights and a record for these entertainment type of fights. So it's taken a while, but I'm sort of there now, and sort of accepting the fact that now boxing is not what I saw it as it was when I was growing up as a teenager and through my 20s and 30s and 40s. It is now a completely different thing, and I suppose we've got to accept that as well. It doesn't mean I've got to like it though, does it? So anyway, I'll keep waffling on forever if we keep walking. I'll end it at that. But give me your thoughts on everything. What do you think about Tim, about the Paul Joshua fight, and also what I said about OPETAIA? Interesting to hear your thoughts and anything else that you want to talk about as well. We'll be back on Monday night for Talking Boxing. I'm sure you got a lot to throw at me as well, but I'll continue to do the walking boxings in the meantime and cover everything that I've sort of missed over the last sort of couple of weeks. So guys, have an awesome Thursday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.